There are some members, some of your colleagues or in your caucus that have, have, have been criticized for some of the things that they have said about the speaker and others. There is a divide within the party. What is it like being there with all of your fellow members when it's not just about Democrats and Republicans, but it's about Republicans and Republicans who don't see eye to eye on things?
Well, and let's be clear, when we say don't see eye to eye, there are folks who have, if they don't believe them, they haven't necessarily refuted them, really flirting with some just off the wall, insane stuff. I mean, space lasers causing forest fires, other conspiracy theories that I don't think are fit to describe on a broadcast station, but just some really utterly bizarre things that are completely divorced from reality. And I think that's the challenge, is I want to get to the point where we have a politics where reasonable people can disagree. Reasonable people can disagree on, what the number should be for X, Y, or Z, COVID package. We can disagree on what needs to be prioritized. I mean, we can't disagree on whether or not there are, fifth dimensional aliens that are controlling some parts of the government, right? So until we get to the point where we have some surety that there are folks operating off of both the sense of good faith and just a sense of objective reality, it's going to be very hard to get to that point. But to your point earlier about the tensions within the conference, that's where we're going to see coming up this week. There's a lot of folks who want to remove Liz Cheney, who's currently the GOP conference chair. They want to remove her from her leadership position as the number 3 ranking Republican in the House of Representatives, solely based off of her vote to impeach, which I joined along with her on that vote, in addition to 8 other Republican members of Congress. And that was a vote of conscience. And the idea of stripping somebody of an assignment because they voted how they felt was right, this was not something that was being whipped. It wasn't something where Republicans were being told to fall in line on this issue. It was, as I said, a vote of conscience. Having the person who suffers the most politically from the insurrection on January 6th be somebody who stood up, took a leadership role, and did what they thought was in the best interest of the country and the party, to me sends an absolute wrong signal. And while we're dealing with that, we're just seeing a proliferation of absurd, insane conspiracy theorization. And to me, that's something that's deeply troubling, both for my party, but for the country as a whole.
Do you have a feel, a thought, an inclination of how to deal with those members if they are to be dealt with? I mean, if they're espousing things that you say are completely unrealistic, is there some retribution for that?
Honestly, at this point, we have a political process that rewards that. The inflammation of controversy, having an oppositional approach, you get rewarded by political loyalty, you get rewarded with financial contributions. So many components of the system are creating a very perverse incentive structure. I think the 2 items that you're referring to that may be put on the table, both expulsion or censure, on the expulsion side of the House, I mean, these are folks that were elected by their districts to come forward. And if we just try to deal with the individual rather than try to reform the system that leads to such broken outcomes, I think we'll be doing ourselves a disservice.
It's pretty clear, or would appear to be, that unless there is new evidence that is presented in a trial in the Senate, there won't be 17 Republicans that will join with the Democrats and independents in voting for impeachment. Is that what you're referring to about people backpedaling? Are you concerned about that?
When I say backpedaling, I mean those who were condemning what happened or acknowledging at least the share of responsibility that President Trump had in the formulation of the 2 lies that led to the storming of the Capitol on January 6th. 1, that November 3rd was a landslide victory for Donald Trump that was stolen, and 2, that January 6th was the day to stop that steal. There was pretty widespread condemnation of that at the moment, and many of the folks who were highly critical have softened and or just said, well, it's time to move on. That to me is what's especially troubling. And I think unless we have accountability, unless we say that we do not tolerate political violence or politicians who flirt with or ride up to that line or frankly are complicit in inciting those type of violent behaviors, unless we're clear and unequivocal in that condemnation and holding those responsible, then we're never going to be able to move past this point.